Really excited to talk with these guys here and recap and go over this long legislative session. We have a lot of new things that are coming through, being signed, including perhaps even today we'll get into as well. But as we move through the morning here, gentlemen, feel free to, while some of these may be directed at certain ones of you, feel free to just jump in and let's talk about this. But as we get ready to, or as we got ready to start this new session, I just kind of wanted to start things off this morning by getting your initial thoughts on the change at the top of the government. We got a new governor, Bob Ferguson. He came out with a pretty impactful state of the state to kick things off, and I know a lot of folks on both sides of the aisle were happy and at the same time not so happy, so maybe he was finding some middle ground. So if anybody would like to just jump in, Drew, let's start with you and just kind of give us what your initial take was before that state of the state and then how you felt that kind of launched yourselves into this session.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for having us here this morning. This is kind of similar to how things are set up in the Capitol. The House has a shared desk, the Senate, you get your own. So happy to be over on your far right. No, it was interesting with the change in administrations. I got elected at the same time Inslee did, and so I had the 12 years of seeing that. And candidly, when Governor Ferguson got elected, I didn't have a lot of high hopes on moving more towards the middle. It just didn't look that way, frankly, during the campaign cycle. And then we get to the State of the State address after he's sworn in. And on the Republican side, we always do a counter press availability thing, and we talk, and usually, this happens, both sides do this, right? You criticize what they said, etc. So kind of gearing up for that, and he starts his State of the State speech, and I'm sitting next to Representative Chris Corey. He was going to be in this media availability with me. And we're looking at each other like, well, our notes are out the window. This is not the speech we were expecting from him. And he struck a very different chord than his predecessor. Look, and I
Governor Ferguson and I are not going to see eye to eye on many social issues and how we do a number of things. But it was a refreshing tone in the sense that he said we can't continue to budget the way we have, which is with unrealistic assumptions, inaccurate growth forecast, and just willy-nilly passing any tax, and we'll come back to that ironically here in a second. But it was a very different tone, and that was encouraging. And again, we'll talk about the taxes here today, I'm sure. But had he not set that tone, taxes that were passed that all of us voted against here would have easily been double what they passed the legislature as, easily. He brought things, Governor Inslee never saw a tax or a fee increase he wasn't willing to sign, frankly, and certainly never took a look at a spending cut. Governor Ferguson took a very different approach on that, and I found that refreshing. And in his first 3 months in office, he tied his predecessor with the number of times he was willing to come and meet with our caucus. In my 12 years with Governor Inslee, he came to my caucus one time. And I said to Governor Ferguson at that State of the State address that, hey, can you up your predecessor on this? And he's like, anytime. And a month later he was in there, and we had very candid conversations. So I just want to acknowledge that he's much more receptive and willing to work with the legislature than his predecessor was. Doesn't mean we're going to agree on everything. We don't. But at least we can have some adult conversations about it, and that's a refreshing change. So I'll leave it with that and pass it on to you guys.
Yeah, Dan, let's hear about your thoughts here in the House, on the House side, as you started those conversations.
Well, thank you, and good morning. Thank you all for coming today. This year, we started out the same as we always start out. So the session, we meet with the majority party. We discuss what our permanent House rules are going to be. And the Speaker told us that she wasn't well respected in the House and that she demanded her respect. And the only way to get that respect is to end a rule that the House has been working under since our inception, in that they needed a supermajority to end debate on the House floor. We told the Speaker that that wouldn't earn respect, She compared her respect level to the former Speaker of the House, Frank Chop, who was a powerful Democrat leader in Washington State, who we all respected. She demanded that she have her respect, and the way that she was going to get it was to take it. And we tried to tell her, Madam Speaker, that is not going to get you respect from Republicans, I assure you. The moment you take away the mic from us and don't let us get to say our piece, all hell will break loose, and it certainly did. We told her that if you did this, if you exercised this new right that you said you had to get, it would end all respect that House Republicans had for you. We find it, I only tell you this because I want you to know how tough this session was. Somebody that has earned and achieved one of the highest elected offices in the state of Washington said that we didn't respect her because she was a female and she was a lesbian. And I find that insulting, but that was the temperature, the tone and tenor of the entire legislative session. Every time the majority party decided that they didn't like what we were saying, they would all stand up and say we were being racist and we were acting inappropriately. That was the backdrop. To echo what Drew said is day one, Governor Inslee goes out day before and he gives his final state of the state. Cats and dogs are falling from the sky. Everything is going to fall apart. The state of Washington is not going to be able to survive. We're going to have to raise taxes by $15 billion. I mean, wow. It was a very depressing speech to hear. The next morning, we hear an energized man, one that says that we're extracting way too much wealth out of this society, that maybe we have pushed a little too hard and we're a little too totalitarian in our legal enactments. And I'll tell you what, it's the first time that I'd ever clapped for a State of the State speech. I just wanted to give you kind of a flavor of what we went through. I'm sure we're going to expand upon a lot of this, and I do thank you for being here this day.
Travis, kind of jump off on that too, and how that led into, in your new position on appropriations, into kind of trying to get more of what the House Republicans' mindset is on the budgets and things like that moving forward.
Yeah, I think, right after the election is when we learned that, oh, wow, we have this huge budget deficit, right? That's when it kind of entered into our consciousness as a state. And of course, now we have a new governor coming in. And it wasn't too long after learning that we had a huge budget hole that we had to contend with that I was given the honor to be the Republican House budget lead. Maybe a little bit like condolences as well. But I was, much like Dan and Drew said, I was refreshed at that State of the State speech of that is balance that in my third session now I've never heard in Olympia. And actually, the governor's OFM, the Office of Financial Management, his director for the budgetary stuff, essentially, actually set up weekly meetings with me. We didn't always agree on things, but like Drew said, there was much more effort there to actually be involved with the legislative process that I never saw from Governor Inslee. So that was a kind of a breath of fresh air. And like Drew said as well, you're not always going to agree on everything, but it's nice when people are actually trying to be at the table and work together on things. And it was nice to hear some of that balance, that there was many things that Governor Ferguson had espoused in his maiden speech to the legislature that are things that the Republican Party has been fighting for a very long time here in this state, different policy angles, and including he even said he wanted to limit his own emergency powers at one point and help try to build housing and make permits faster. And I think I might be paraphrasing a quote from Governor Ferguson, but he said he doesn't want to defend government, he wants it to work. And I think that's a sentiment that we all feel, but it's easy to give a speech, right? And now we see the end result of where policy and budgets meet the intentions of that beginning speech now here at the end when all the bills are getting signed. And I suspect they'll sign the budget, and we'll get more into that in a minute. But it was kind of like, was I excited going into the session? No, because we're facing this very large tax increases as a result of our budget hole. I believe that we could have done it without any new taxes. I still believe that today. I still believe it tomorrow as well. But it was nice to hear the governor kind of lower the temperature of the, from double of the largest tax increases in state history to less than half of still but the largest tax increases in state history, and to kind of push back on his own party at times. I think the governor, just no matter who it is, should be an elected office that serves all of the people of Washington and tries to strike that balance, and not just necessarily trying to ram through what the most radical portion of that governor's party is. Policy-wise. So going into session and having this new role, especially I was also elected to be the assistant floor leader, managing the House floor for our side. A lot of responsibility on my plate, but and a lot to do in this session. So if you see pictures of me after session, you see big black bags under my eyes. I look like the crypt keeper from Tales of the Crypt at the end. So it was, I called it a white-hot, five-alarm raging dumpster fire. That's what this session felt like. It was the worst I've ever been a part of, and there's people been around for 20 years, and it was the worst they've ever been a part of as well. But at least going into session, there was some hope there that the governor was striking a little bit of a more moderate tone. But I think we all knew just at the beginning that it was going to be an uphill road.
We'll get to all the new fees and taxes and how that impacts the 35th. But in the capital budget, there was plenty to celebrate here in the 35th. So I kind of want to just go through some of these, as many of the folks in the audience today have direct impacts with some of these ones. And feel free to jump in and talk a little bit about the background and the reasons why some of these did make it into the capital budget. But let's start here in Shelton proper. That's the Youth Community Center. Got some much needed help for some of the upgrades that are happening in downtown. Dan, do you want to take that, start us off, and just kind of talk a little bit about what you know about the community center and then what this is going to do to help them push forward with their mission?
Well, I mean, we know that the Youth Community Center is a growing concept, a growing idea in Mesa County. It's not been around for a long time. They needed some more support to make sure that their modernization, their building could stand the test of time, and we were happy to help them out with that.
Anything else, Drew or Travis, on that one? Or when it comes to how impactful these types of organizations are for the youth? I know you're heavily involved in not only the education of our youth, but also just protecting and making everyone safe.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at a 30,000-foot view, you see that we have dramatically increased juvenile crime, and we have a crisis with our youth right now. So community centers like this and other functions that we can have that are safe and healthy for our kids, especially if they're at risk, is more important now than ever before. They have a long life to live still, and we can make a big difference early on with little investments like this to make sure that we're giving them the best chance that they can, not just educationally, but with their other opportunities as well. And so Youth Connections done a great job, and we've got other entities throughout the 35th District as well. But we need more places for our kids to be together and to be around good role models and mentors, and not to be doom scrolling electronic devices and hiding away in the depths of a basement somewhere, just burning their eyes out on screens and whatever else. I mean, there is a stunning problem, I think, just societally around our youth and what's going on right now. I think especially young males, I worry about this a lot because I mentioned juvenile crime earlier, but I think more than a crime problem, we have a young male problem. And our society is built that if you're a young male, unless you're the exceptional 10%, then there isn't a whole lot of prospects for you, and you got to try twice, 3 times as hard to get ahead. And they're not having meaningful relationships either with the opposite sex or with the same sex of their their peers, and there's this devastation of loneliness and depression. It leads to crime, and it leads to a lot of other things. I think that sometimes in Olympia you don't think about those big problems. You think in small policy bites, right? But I think sometimes it's really good to step back and think of the 30,000-foot view. And how does that relate to a community center for our youth? Well, it's a good thing because they're going to do the opposite of all those bad things I just mentioned. And we're going to give them a real chance to have healthy relationships and to build healthy goals and have good mentors in their lives and to have solid relationships with their peers.
If you haven't been downtown to see the mock-ups in the windows of the Youth Connection, and Susan's here as well, plus they have their gala coming up, so you can talk with her more about that. Some of the other wins here in the capital budget for the 35th, PUD 1 got some water system improvements. Talk a little bit about how that helps in the growth of our community and the safety of our community that way, and some just other ways that the PUD 1, for example, is working hard for the kind of the other parts of the county.
Well, from day one, excuse me, when I was elected, I felt that this community had been largely neglected when it came to infrastructure dollars for a number of years, and I've made that my focus when it came to these types of projects. This is $1 million project for PUD 1. They can't. That kind of a project they can't put on the ratepayers. It's not feasible. The same for PUD 3. There's also a number of North Mason water projects to help out there. When you're able, and we did a number of things for the city of Shelton over the past years to dealing with the sewer upgrades, extending the state patrol's connections there to help with development. Those are critical for a community of this size because we're not big enough and we're not small enough. And so the more that we can put those dollars to work and get that infrastructure done, that spurs economic development, whether it be through housing, through business development. And it doesn't happen overnight, and sometimes that's the frustrating thing. But I'm a big believer in doing those types of projects. I think you get long-term a better result and a better return overall for the community. So happy to lead that with these guys. And again, the impact is significant because of our size. The ratepayers, whether it be sewer or water or electric, just cannot bear what the cost would be to upgrade those systems. And we've got serious utility issues in our state and in our nation, frankly. And we've got to, I believe we've got to continue to drive on these, and whether it's water or electricity or otherwise, especially on the energy sector. We don't have the generating capacity and we don't have the transmission capacity. These are huge issues. So I'm going to continue to work hard on when it comes, frankly, to the overall utility and infrastructure across our state and especially in our community, because I believe that will have a great impact in the long term and helps to stabilize things.
Well, thank you, Drew. I totally agree with what Drew just said, but I want to make sure that all of you know that the three of us have prioritized infrastructure as our capital budget investments, and we look at them as investments because if we get the capital to our purveyors of those services, they can then not have to absorb that and pass those on to the ratepayers. But Drew's absolutely correct. We keep an absolute laser beam focus on our infrastructure that we have. Shelton is always in need of more infrastructure improvements because they have very large infrastructure systems. The sewer and water improvements are kind of ongoing. But the only way we're going to see growth in our community is to make sure that we can accept the growth. Right now, we're kind of at a point where we have to add capacity to add housing, right? We have to add infrastructure capacity and those basic service needs. Happy to work with all of our purveyors of those services and make sure that we, appropriately award those funds to make sure that you're not paying for it monthly or weekly, however your rates are set. Thank you.
Yeah, let's move right into that next kind of topic, but we'll go to the north part of the county, the North Mason electrical capacity and reliability. There are some upgrades there. The new Belfair substation, which is going to add more capacity for housing and business, plus be a little more attractive for the Naval Shipyard as they look to modernize and expand their footprint out, potentially into parts of Mason County. That, as well as the Belfair Water District, which supports housing. Let's talk a little bit about that. Travis, go ahead if you want to start on this, how those two benefits to the 35th from the budget are going to help make Allen North towards Kitsap County a better sell for folks.
Yeah, you know, I just want to echo what these guys have said in that, you know, we operate as a team. Not every legislative district does that. I'll just tell you, and it's kind of sad, but we operate as a pretty good team and very effective at the capital budget, and our priorities have always been infrastructure, economic development, and preserving our community spaces that are important to rural communities. And, you know, as Jeff mentioned, we're facing they're going to build a new dry dock, and it's not a if, it's a when. Right, they're going to build a new dry dock at PSNS, and that's going to get 50, 60,000 new people to our region. And as they get kind of gentrified out of Bremerton area, where do you think they're going to come? Right to North Mason. And so you've probably heard the Mike Tyson quote, everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the face. You know, we have to have a plan in order to, you know, at least try to manage some of that growth. I mean, growth is coming. There's nothing we can do about that. People are going to be coming. So it's about how do we ease our way into that growth and plan for it as smartly as we possibly can. Not everything can always go 100% perfect, but gone are the days where growth just happens organically and then all the developers build the infrastructure. Those days are erased. Those days are gone. They do not exist anymore. And anyone who tells you that they exist, it's not true. As a matter of fact, it's so expensive to do business in our state that it has to be the government that has to help, especially in rural communities, build or invest in some of these infrastructure projects, or else you get nothing, and then you just get a lot of sloppy growth that you didn't plan for. And so there's actually a couple things at work here. There is, you know, you mentioned PUD3. We got some money to build some new power. We need more electricity up in the north end. And we got some money for Belfair Water District for their various things. And Belfair Water District has done a fantastic job over the last decade of really coming into their own as far as doing a great job running their water district. And we like to not just invest funds into a project, but invest funds with people who we know are going to essentially kick ass at those projects and get them done. But you need water, you need power, you need sewer. We're going to get all those things, so that's the building blocks so that you can have development for small business and for housing, right? On the transportation side of that, we also did some pretty heavy work to make sure, I mean, our knees are hurting from begging so much, you guys. But we got everything that we could possibly get for North Mason County, and it was a lot. We made sure that the Belfair bypass is fully funded, so we have a transportation route along there as well. So I feel very, like, that's the most positive thing, I think, the capital budget of the session, and as it relates to Mason County. Just incredible stuff that we were able to do with all of the budget pressures that we have. But it's going to be critical that we establish that infrastructure for economic development and for housing.
I think, and Drew, you might be able to talk a little bit about this closer, but we're looking at potentially some groundbreaking in 27 on the bypass area, some right-of-way acquisitioning happening there. Those, in addition to the area widening, the Gorst area, that's all in addition to making sure the power load's there, the water load's there. If you're not able to get people up to this new dry dock, up to the base, that is another kind of issue when it comes to making sure that these projects move forward and the choices are made to benefit the 35th. I know that last year, 21,000 trips were made from Mason Transit up to the shipyard. Now, those are worker-driver bus programs that leave right out of Shelton early in the morning and head all the way up and pick up people to help that workforce up there.
Yeah, this is going to be huge. And I mean, in addition to the dry dock, we have another aircraft carrier getting repositioned here. That's 5,000 plus people and that's not even, the air wing isn't there, but you have a huge contingent. I mean, that's going to explode, and we've got, again, it goes back to that infrastructure, but you also got to have the transportation aspect. And is anybody here from DOT by chance? Great. They are a pain in the ass. They have done, and I'm not kidding, and it's the bureaucracy of that organization has got to change. I'm encouraged by the new director and by the governor's commitment to streamline things, because they have been, on one hand, they've been helpful, and on another hand, they've thrown up every roadblock at us legislatively to try to not have to do the Belfair bypass. The most recent was adding, how many millions was it to do the wildlife deal?
$15 million.
They wanted to add $15 million to the cost because to do wildlife corridors on it. And it's like, guys, I came out here via the Navy in 1994, and they were talking about doing it. We got to do this now. And we will continue to spearhead that. And I'm glad, it's tough to negotiate things into a budget you're not going to vote for. But we've been successful at that. And it's why it's important to maintain relations on both sides of the aisle. And I'm grateful. I work very closely with Senator Elias. He's the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. We have a great working relationship. We acknowledge where we don't agree, and we move on from those things and find where we do agree. But and the reason I voted against it, by the way, is because of a huge gas tax and fee tax increase that's involved in there. And I think I've been beating this drum for years that WashDOT needs to be funded differently. And until we do that, I can't continue to ask you to pay more money, bottom line. And thank you. So I don't even remember what your question was, but I am proud that we're still keeping the bypass on track. The widening in Gorse is a huge bottleneck. It's a huge issue that I wish we would just federalize that program, because it's a national security issue. We are a strategic spot for the entire Western Hemisphere with our bases, and it's critical that we have people to be able to get to those spots. And Kitsap can't support all that housing. It's gonna bleed over into us, into Jefferson County and other areas. So it's critical that we have the ability to move people.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. It was just kind of a bow on the transportation aspect of the other wins of the 35th, more capacity and things like that. Well, you brought it up, and the other guys up here have also brought it up. But let's move into some of the different ways now all of these budgets are going to be paid for. We saw early on a projected $12 billion-ish shortfall. If you saw some of the, I think I even saw an ad in the Super Bowl about the state budget and how the revenues and the budgets are coming in, and they're spending a lot more, and we're still bringing in more, but we're spending even more. It looks like the gas taxes are going in. We're seeing increases on the discovery passes, gun permitting, B&O in different ways to help pay for a lot of this stuff. If you guys want to go down the line, or I'll grab the mic together and just kind of riff a little on how this is going to be impactful to us here in the 35th, especially in those topics.
Well, I mean, yes, each one of us are going to have to take a small section, because there's so many increases in taxes in Washington State that, well, I mean, I think every one of them, every functional line has been increased. We did some farming. We were able to get some benefit. I think some of the most negative that I hear from my constituents is the gas tax increase. It not only went up 6 cents, and then they did a sin tax above that for diesel, because diesel's so horrible, according to them. The worst thing is they indexed it to inflation. So you can almost guarantee that your gas tax is going to increase by the rate of inflation in Washington State every single year. The biggest thing, since I sit on the Transportation Committee, that I really focused on how do we draw in our spending, and we really are responsible as in the transportation budget. Travis could more talk about the operating budget, although there's a lot of scary things there. We didn't even attempt to do any reforms. I agree with Drew. DOT is a real pain in the butt to work with, and if you talk to them, they agree. They agree that they have been turned into such a bureaucracy that they are the cause of a lot of our projects being delayed. I'll just give you a little sneak peek. Our chief environmental planner in Washington State came to me and like all state agencies did, really scared and afraid and upset about Orange Man syndrome and they forget to talk about, well, we still have a state of Washington to run. So this chief environmentalist said, hey, I'm really upset that Trump administration is going to relax some of their environmental regulations and their environmental planning. And I was like, yay, my goodness, like we waste probably 30% of our projects, all of our projects in Washington State, we actually waste on unnecessary, duplicative environmental planning and environmental studies, right? There's a whole industries on that. And he was all upset that they're doing it. And I says, do you do a great job protecting the environment? And do you make sure that the environment is your top focus? And do you accomplish that? Yes, I do. I says, then you should be clapping right now. What are you talking about? You still get to do that. You still get to protect the environment. And we don't have to do one more study. And you see this light bulb go off in his head. And he's like, wow. That might be positive. I said, yes, instead of worrying so much about all the stuff that may happen, run the state of Washington. And I'm hoping that that little bit of talk that we had about reforms, about the fact that we could be quicker, we could be smarter, we could be leaner, takes hold with the new director of the Transportation Committee. But on the transportation area, we raised almost every vehicle weight fee, every licensing fee that you pay. We raised the recycling fee that you have to pay for your tires. We doubled that. And yes, Jeff just mentioned it, if you just park on state land that you own and already paid for, you have to buy now a way more expensive Discover Pass just to park there. I have argued and argued that if you're just parking there to recreate on your land that you paid for, that is a state asset, you shouldn't have to pay to park there. That is ridiculous. We can absorb it. If it's an improved campground and there is a lot of improvements to go in there, okay, well maybe you have to pay a little bit of fee to keep those up because they're quite expensive. But we're just taxing the fun out of Washington State. It is hard for a young family to get out and recreate in Washington. It should be easy for them to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, you should wrap it up with the budget on this whole discussion. So I'm glad you're there, Travis, because you're very detail oriented. For 8 years, I was in his similar role in the House Appropriations. I'm still going through counseling over that. And yeah, it's tough, and those days are long. When I went over to the Senate, I was asked to go to Ways and Means. I was like, no, I need a break. And so I'm dealing with transportation now. But I just want to set the table on this whole budget issue and then give this to Travis. Again, going back to when I was elected, same time Inslee was, our state budget at that time in 2012-13 was $32 billion. The budget enacted last month is 78.
Almost 78.
How many of you had your income more than double in the last 12 years? Raise your hand. Okay, got 2, 3. All right. And that's pretty indicative across the spectrum, right? What's this budget deficit? Let's take this back to a family. The median income in the state of Washington is a little over $80,000. In Mason County, it's a little less than that. Let's just round it up to $100,000 to make math easy. My wife and I sit down, we plan our budget for next year. I want a Ferrari, she wants a condo in Palm Springs. I'd like to get a place in Florida, and she wants a Aston Martin. Shit, excuse my language. We have a $10 million deficit. That's what this is. The growth of spending in this state is so much, is so outpaced. We have record revenues, folks, record revenues. We have record spending beyond that, and that's what's happened. So this, quote, budget deficit, it's a structural issue. It was their wish list, the other side's wish list of everything that they possibly wanted, just as the example I just gave, that is unattainable from the taxpayers of this state. And that's what the situation is. It wasn't, we didn't have a downturn in our revenue and we have a budget deficit. That's different. This is uncontrolled spending. And it's unacceptable. And you combine that with the regulatory environment. Is there anybody here from the hospital district by chance? Because I don't remember the name of the project. They're doing this expansion, and when you build, you've got to get approval not only from your regular permitting stuff, but also from the Department of Health. And these are the things that are just drive me absolutely nuts. The Department of Health is supposed to sign off on these things within 60 days unless there's a major issue when it comes to doing an expansion for a medical facility. And Mason General had been waiting, and it was 122 days, and they hadn't heard anything from the Department of Health. And they're now about to get charged $75,000 by the general contractor because they couldn't start on time. And so I fired off a letter to the Department of Health secretary, and I copied the governor's office, and I just said, this is unacceptable. You guys will be paying the $75,000, right? The next day, they signed off on it. I got a response from the governor's office. Will you help me in reforming permitting processes? I'm like, shoot, now I sent that email, darn it. But absolutely. But these are the problems that cause this stuff. And I will give credit to the governor, to his administration. He is willing to reform state government. And with all that, and that kind of blasé explanation of why our budget was in the crisis it is, I think Travis should take it.
Yeah, of course, like I said earlier, we learned that we have a big budget hole, and at first it was like 10 billion, then it was 12 billion, and you watch the news the next day it was 15 billion, and then it was 17 billion, and then it was 20 billion, and then it was 21 billion. We're like, well, hell, what's the real budget number? The nonpartisan Office of Program Research said that the budget deficit was $7.5 billion. That was the real budget deficit. Well, why the 15 billion then? Well, it's to include all of their new spending, right? And Drew hit it on the head. That's our spending is vastly outpacing, what our revenues, even though our revenues are record revenues. As a matter of fact, our revenues have went up over 100% in the last 10 years. We've raised taxes and fees over 50 times in that same amount of time. And of course, we've over doubled our state spending. And for the fourth straight budget in a row, we have spent more than we take in revenue, purposefully. It's simply crazy. It's unsustainable. Nobody does that with their family budgets. And they raised the largest tax increases in state history to do it. And who did they raise it on? Was it the rich? Because we heard that, right? We got to raise taxes on the rich. They got to pay their fair share. Well, who did we raise taxes on? We raised B&O taxes on our small businesses. We raised property taxes on people who are getting squeezed all across the state of Washington, especially if you're low income or on fixed incomes or if you're a retiree. As a matter of fact, that property tax bill is getting signed today, I believe. And it's frustrating. It's deeply frustrating. We used you, the citizens of Washington, the hardworking people of Washington State, as a bailout fund for the negligent budgeting decisions of the majority party in Olympia over the last handful of years. And what they've done, essentially, is they've put bills on layaway. They say, you know what, we're going to pass a bill today, it's worth $1 billion. And then, when we're going to pay for it? 2026. Right? So it's years in the future that we're going to pay for this. And then that's why our budget deficit surprised us, I guess. It wasn't a surprise to some of us who follow the budget, but it was a surprise to many people across the state. And what it was is that our revenues were climbing higher and higher and higher than ever before, especially coming out of the pandemic. And then they just slowed down a little bit, but there's still record revenues. There's still a lot of it there, but we had put bills on layaway that we couldn't pay for. And so some cuts had to be made, but they said, well, we need these massive tax increases to make sure our most vulnerable people don't fall through the cracks. So what did we get as a result of the largest tax increases in state history on our businesses and property owners and others, including regressive sales tax increases and all of the joy taxes, the hunting, the fishing, the liquor, the Discover Pass, you name it. There's a whole list of them. Even a bottle tax, even a packaging tax. But at the end of the day, We robbed single mothers on the edge of poverty from their child support payments. We took money from the age blind and disabled program. We cut Medicaid, and even at one point in the budget was to slash in half postpartum care for mothers who just gave birth. We didn't just stop them from falling through the cracks, we literally pushed them through the cracks. And what did we get as a result of this budget? Who wins as a result of this budget? That's a question I think that gets asked a lot every single session when you look at the budget. Who's the winner here? Who's the winner and who's the loser? The winners of this budget are politicians and their pay increases, like me, bureaucrats who don't offer service delivery in our state agencies, the middle and high-tier people who make big, fat, enormous wages and don't really do anything down the ground level, and it's criminals. As a matter of fact, when we were robbing from our own citizens, including on housing and essential needs, we gave almost $500 million more to help illegal immigrants. And you know what? Good people can have a heart for undocumented or illegal immigrants, and maybe some people don't. But at the end of the day, we should be taking care of our own citizens and not being taxed, an unsustainable amount more in order to do it. And the policy level decisions that go along with the budget are just astounding. Things like rent control. Yeah, I know people are having a hard time paying the rent, but that's a false promise. That rent control bill will essentially ensure that rents steadily increase way more than they ever were going to before. And when you couple that with increases in property taxes and B&O and sales taxes and everything else, it's a recipe for disaster. The people who we need to pull us out of this housing crisis, the developers, are going to leave the state because the bills that we passed, the budget that we passed, the policy decisions that we made here in Olympia are great bills for Texas, for Idaho, for Arizona, and for other states that are far more competitive. And they say, oh, well, we got to tax a 1% B&O surcharge to the rich employers, the big businesses, the Boeings, the Starbucks, the Amazons, and the Microsoft, and all these people. Well, oh, you want to tax the people who provide the family wage jobs in this state, who provide 401ks and dental and vision and healthcare? And I mean, we all know, and I think Drew mentioned it, you got to make well over $100,000 just to survive and make ends meet in this state. We are one of the most unaffordable states in the nation. The highest costs of gas, groceries, rent, housing, healthcare, insurance, utilities, energy, you name it. And this is all self-imposed by policies in Olympia. People are sick and tired of it. And that's why we all voted no on the budget. It's unsustainable for the entire state. And you know what? We have a revenue forecast coming out in June. And our end fund balance in this biennial budget is $225 million. And in the last revenue forecast, we took a hit of $500 million, or give or take. And so I feel like if we continue on the same trajectory, the budget will be out of balance, even with the largest tax increases in state history, by the summertime. And we will have a choice to make, either to live with that or to go into a special session, if the revenue forecast happens like I think it might. And so at the end of the day, we did absolutely nothing to solve the problems of the past. We did a few things. One of my bills was to end the 4.5% revenue assumption in the budget. Basically, it's a budget gimmick that allows you to assume money that you never are going to have. And the governor agreed with us on that, and he pushed back, and we got that revenue, the correct revenue assumptions in the budget. One other positive thing I'll note is that although we didn't fully fund it, we did some really great special education policy stuff like ending the cap in special ed, which will absolutely be a benefit to our most vulnerable students in our schools. But other than that, we didn't do anything to help our local school districts like Shelton or Pioneer or North Mason. And as a matter of fact, we cut LEA and ALE, and we're going to basically destroy Merriam Knight as a result of this budget. It was cruel and it was sick, because the only winners are politicians, bureaucrats, and criminals, and that's wrong. We shouldn't be raising taxes to help that subset of people. But I want to just mention really quickly 2 other good things that happened. After weeks of fighting, we were able to save Rainier School for our most gravely disabled people in our state. It's their home. It's a residential health care facility that they were going to end and send all of our most gravely, almost unimaginable disabilities out into the streets where there was nowhere to live and no health care options. We were able to end that. And then there was another bill about juvenile rehabilitation, juvenile justice, that would have essentially put it all on the cities and counties, and there would be almost no more putting juveniles who commit heinous crimes into detention at all, and there's barely any right now. And so with that, I think that there's a couple of silver linings there, but not a lot. Like I said, it was a white-hot raging dumpster fire, and the budget is unsustainable. We'll be back here once again, you guys, and I hope that it doesn't result in more tax increases, because as a small business owner, Drew is as well, Dan's, retirement income as well, so we get it. We feel the same pain, and I'm pissed. I'm pissed that I have to pay those bills, and I get absolutely nothing in it for return. Our kids get nothing for it in return. We get absolutely no relief, and we could have. We could have passed a budget. The Senate Republicans put together a no new tax budget that didn't cut services, and that was rejected. It's just insane. And so with that, I will get off my high horse.
As you can see, the passion from your 35th district delegation is there. Tough at times to be in the minority party, to get your ideals and your aspirations for how the state is run through that. Though I will say too, before we get to our, I got to get a question up here, but there was also a law that was passed. It was House Bill 1457. It was Dan's GPS tracking bill for sexually violent predators. He's been working on that for as long as I can remember talking with him in the state legislature. So give me a little update on that and what that means to victims and how that helps.
So those of you who heard me talk before, Travis, Drew, and I have taken on sexually violent predator community release with a passion. It's broken. Many in Olympia admit it's broken. There is, we've been working around the edges, small little fixes, all kinds of things that are hard to explain up here. But one is, if you're going to release a sexually violent predator into the community, there is a monitoring device that is near real-time monitoring. Very close to real-time monitoring, that you can program their isolation spots where they're supposed to stay away from, and there can be survivor notification, which I think is the most important part of this monitoring. We now have the technology to say, that person that injured you that is now out, we can give you advance notice, 5 miles advance notice that the person's in the area. That means the survivor then can phone a friend if they want, say, hey, I feel scared, and they can bring a friend over. They can get in their car and just drive away. And the tamper, they're way less tamper, they're tamper resilient, if you will. Goodness gracious, I can't believe I lost words. But it is way harder to remove these ankle monitors. The DOT or the SEC had the right when people were released in the community to make sure that to order that they have these new type of monitoring. We just said they had to, and we think that's a step in the right direction. There's so much more to do. There is a court system rule that is causing us huge problems with sexually violent predator releases, where the state is being ordered to pay up to $81,000 a month to house them. That is crazy. Even in our correctional facilities, which are exceptionally expensive, it's about $6,000 to $7,000 a month to house and incarcerate one of those. So there is a lot of reform that has to happen, and we will continue to work at that. Thank you, Jeff.
So quickly, as we get ready to wrap this up, one of the questions from the audience here was kind of a study that's out there looking at the pension planning, the different PERS programs, to merge them all into one retirement plan. So retirees, according to this question here, will get a cost of living adjustment to all retirees from state service. Would you guys be open to that sort of a, I don't know if it would be a fix or just a look at, or how that would work in there, Drew?
Yeah, there's some pros to it, but the way the bill was introduced, there was a lot of unanswered questions. And one good thing that we do in this state is our pensions. We are one of the better funded states. We're not 100% funded, but we're in the higher percentile of fully funding our pension plans. And so there's a proposal to basically merge everything together. You cut some administrative costs, you can streamline things and be able to provide a COLA. I'm all for having the COLA on the pensions. I think it's important. But the bill that was introduced this past year fell short and didn't account for some things. And then you had a horrible decision done in the budget process that we're setting ourselves up for failure. And if anybody's familiar with Illinois' pension, it's been underfunded since 1912 because they did these gimmicks. And what I'm referring to is, if you assume a different rate of return, because we can do that in the budget, we can raise it, we can lower it, that impacts how much the state has to put into the pension fund then to be considered, meeting its funding requirements. So the budget that was passed made an assumption of an investment return that's above the norm that has been used. So in doing that, it lessened how much the state had to put into the pension funds. And that's what Illinois started doing 100 years ago, and it's come back to bite them. It now consumes 22% of their operating budget to fund pension liabilities, and we've put ourselves on that path now. And so when we talk about the merger on the surface, I agree that there are a lot of pros to that. There's some things we could do there that would streamline it, but now I'm very worried about this other action that was taken. So we've kind of got to go back to the drawing board altogether on the pension. I've been an advocate for the COLA. We've gotten it in there a number of times for the PERS 1 folks because it was not written into the original legislation for that, and so we have to do it all the time. So I'm all for doing that, but doing it the right way.
I want to be courteous of everybody's time and your guys' time here. We're just about time to wrap. Again, a big thank you to our 35th District delegation here, State Senator Drew McEwen and House Representatives Dan Griffey and Travis Couture. So on behalf of the two chambers that helped put this on, Kevin and the EDC, and of course all of you here today, a big thank you for being here. Big thank you for talking. It's just about 9 o'clock. I'm sure we can pull these guys here a little bit if you want to pull them off to the side and ask them some questions as well. But again, that puts a wrap on this 35th District wrap up here at Public Works. Thank you, everybody. Thanks to Tees. Thanks to Diedrich on Mason Web. You guys can go back and watch this again. And thanks, guys. Nice talking with you for sure. Big hand for the representatives here.
The preceding presentation on Mason Web TV, powered by HCC, has been brought to you by Hood Canal Communications, committed to providing quality services that exceed customer expectations in voice, video, data, and customer service, keeping our community connected since 1934. Mason County Public Health and Human Services Prevention Education Partners Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. Mason PUD 3, connecting our community with safe, reliable, economical, and sustainable services 24/7. The Conklin team at Windermere Real Estate. When it comes to real estate, nothing compares to local knowledge. Mason County Public Utility District Number 1, Washington State's first public utility district, proudly serving the Hood Canal in Mason County since 1935. And Mason Health, united community, empowered people, exceptional health.
Thanks for watching Mason Web TV, powered by HCC.